With Sleepless I. Tales from the Angel Share, Volume 4. By Marella Sands. Read by Rett MacPherson. Chapter 1. I knocked on my boss's office door and waited impatiently for him to answer. The Angel Share bar was deserted, which was expected, since the place didn't open until later in the afternoon, but I knew Ware would be here. He was always here. If he had a home to go to, I didn't know anything about it. When he didn't answer, I yelled out, "Ware!" The creaky sound of the door to the street startled me, and I turned to see one of Ware's compatriots, Truck, entering. He nodded to me. "Boss is out," he said. "He thought you might be by, though." "Did he send you to babysit this?" I pointed at the small brown papery thing that had followed me here. "Or me?" The scrap hissed. It was no more than a foot high and looked like a weird half-monkey, half-bat object made by someone very talented at the most complex origami. Its flat black eyes were narrowed at Truck. He laughed. "Oh, it's a cute one." "Cute?" "Yeah, sometimes they look unfinished. It's hard to explain. You'll probably see one like that someday, since you can see them." I stopped talking, realizing that what Truck meant was that I, by virtue of being special, by being what his kind called lost, could see things others couldn't. Ware had already said something like that to me, but a lot of what he'd said hadn't really sunk in. Does that mean it can follow me in public and no one will know? Is it invisible to everyone? What if it hisses at someone? Bites someone? Truck approached the bar and shrugged. "They'll probably think it was a mosquito or something. Most humans aren't very perceptive." Truck was several inches over 6 feet and dressed like some kind of biker dude, except in denim rather than leather. His ensemble came complete with boots, a bandana tied around his head, and a large chain dangling from belt loop to pocket. I assume his wallet or phone or keys were at the end of the chain, but it could have been a candy bar for all I knew. He had eyes so light blue they almost looked white. His hair was sandy, but with gray at the temples, wiry, and held back with a rubber band. When I'd had long hair, I wouldn't use a rubber band because they always seemed to pull out more hair than they contained. But if Truck wanted to lose hair to his choice of hair ties, what business was it of mine? "Here, dude," said Truck. He held out a hand to the hissing thing at my feet. The scrap stopped hissing long enough to sniff his hand, then pull back. He glanced at me as if uncertain about something. "Oh ho," said Truck. "It's imprinted on you like a little duck." He laughed. "Glad you find it so funny," I mumbled. "What am I supposed to do with it? It's a dead person's soul, right? Shouldn't I be laying it to rest or something?" "A girl and her scrap," said Truck. "Or a woman and her soul, except it's not your soul. I mean, like yours." Yeah, I get it. I knew he was mocking some book or movie title I'd heard of once upon a time, but couldn't place it right now. But the question remains, what am I supposed to do with it? Why do anything? I can't just go around being followed by a human soul, especially if it might be bitey. The thing's feral. Maybe it won't harm me, but what about Castro? What about Petunia? What does it eat? Will it just keep itself occupied, or will it destroy the apartment? What are the rules here? Truck shrugged, which did not surprise me. He was, like my boss, one of the Forlorn. They were a race of beings that, before taking up residence on Earth, had for eons flown between the stars on wings of glittering feathers composed of crystal and metal, or something. I'd only seen their true forms in visions, and the odd, shiny metallic material that had formed their bodies, wings, and feathers was something I was sure we'd never seen on this planet or had had to try to describe in human language. In any case, the Forlorn, being nearly as old as the universe, often seemed to find it difficult to have much empathy for short-lived beings like humans. They might like or even love individual humans from time to time, but the human race in general, they just couldn't work up much emotion at all, which, I guess, wasn't that surprising. If I'd lived for billions of years, creatures that could barely eke out a century probably would be mere bugs to me, too. "When's Ware coming back?" I asked. Truck waved dismissively. Who knows? He's probably checking on... He looked at me with narrowed eyes. I don't know what he's already told you. Not nearly enough, I said. I know he's got a scrap in the office. I know it's the soul of one of the lost. I know I'm one of the lost and that I could be a scrap someday. Truck nodded absently. Sure. Some of the basics. I saw my opening, but you know more. He just gave me a minatory look. Yeah, I said. How could something as old as the universe not know more than a mere mortal like myself? That's one way to put it, but you're clever. I would have thought you'd have figured out more on your own. Figure out how? Are there books about this stuff? Is there a mythology that gets most of it right? Truck went behind the bar and grabbed a bottle of 18-year Glenfiddich. I'm heading out to check on some things, he said. Bring a bottle for yourself and I'll catch you up on some stuff if you'd like. Just you, though. I doubted Ware would hold the theft of a bottle of scotch against me, but I had no idea if I should trust Truck enough to go off somewhere alone with him. Truck noticed my hesitation. Or not. It's not a problem for me either way. Whose side were you on in the war, I asked. His blonde eyebrows raised. You know about the war? Yeah, well, only a tiny bit. Lucy said there was a war, and I know she was on the other side under someone whose name I don't know. Someone that Ware was close to, at least a long time ago. Truck nodded. You have no idea what war is like for our kind. You humans just play at it. Great, I said. So which side were you on? He laughed. Direct as always. Focused, too. Okay, well, I followed Ware. He's more stable, and he doesn't mess with you otherwise. The other dude is, well, you'd call him a micromanager. Suspicious, paranoid, always worried about loyalty. That doesn't sound like the kind of person Ware would be close to, I said. I thought they were like BFFs. They were. Ware's pretty much the same guy he's always been. A bit aloof, gruff, uncompromising, but generally fair. The other one wasn't so different at first, but he changed. I think... He shrugged. Well, I don't really know. I can only speculate. You coming? Coming where? I asked, still undecided. Nature area. I've got traps to check. You catch animals in a nature area? Is that legal? He laughed. No, I don't physically catch them in traps. They get photographed. Trail cams, you know? I call them traps. You never know what's going to show up. Surely there's a limit to what can show up, I said. Opossums, raccoons, deer, right? I couldn't remember if Missouri had any bears or mountain lions these days. Yeah, Truck said with an odd sarcastic lilt in his voice. Raccoons. I wasn't sure how to take that. He acted as though there would be something extraordinary roaming the forests of Missouri, but what else could be out there? Things like scraps were the remains of people, and deep in the woods, there shouldn't be that many people, much less many who were special, like the lost. He was probably just trying to wind me up. I decided to ignore his odd tone for now. Even though I didn't want to go, I knew I probably should. The promise that I might find out more than Ware was willing to share was too good to pass up. And honestly, Truck, as well as Ware or any of the others, was sufficiently stronger than me, and supernatural creatures besides, that it wasn't like I was safer staying home. What kept Truck from entering my apartment and harming me if he wanted? Nothing at all. Exactly the same thing that would keep him from harming me in the woods. I shuddered. Safety was so often an illusion. A locked door? Locks were easily picked. Car alarm? Who paid attention to those anyway? Alarm system? They generally tried to call you first to make sure the alarm wasn't a mistake before they even thought about calling the authorities. Safety wasn't something anyone was promised. Fine, I said, but I should pick up a few things from my apartment and let my partner know I won't be home for tonight. A couple of days, said Truck. I'll let Ware know you're with me, so he won't expect you to show up here. I glanced at the scrap, which was even now climbing up a bar stool, its nose working overtime. I bet it could smell the alcohol. I wondered if a scrap that was interested in alcohol post-death was someone who'd been a lush in life. Who knew? Maybe Truck would share that with me too. I was suspicious of the timing. For Ware to be out and Truck to show up so conveniently meant this was probably a setup on Ware's part. He wanted me to find out something from Truck. More than likely, something about these traps in the woods. If Ware thought I should know, I should definitely know. But why someone couldn't just sit down and tell me was frustrating. I guess this was a see-it-for-yourself kind of thing. I grabbed the scrap and put it on my shoulder. Let's go. Truck nodded and headed out without waiting to watch me follow. I snatched the nearest bottle, an unopened Westward American single malt, and followed him out the door. The scrap made a mewling sound in my ear, but I didn't know if that meant it approved of the whiskey choice, didn't like me going with Truck, or was complaining about being stuck on my shoulder. Maybe eventually I'd learn more about it, maybe even from Truck. That made me feel only slightly better about this impromptu trip. Truck locked the door behind us and we headed out into the cool of the autumn afternoon. Yellow leaves rustled at my feet and the scrap jumped down to grab a few and shoved them into its mouth before gamboling on ahead. I couldn't help but be horrified that the stupid toothy thing was what I was likely to turn into once I died. Who had this scrap been in life? Did I even want to know? Maybe Truck could tell me more about that too. I took a deep breath and got in my car. Truck got in. What else? A truck. It was one of those monster pickups that most people living in the city didn't have an excuse to own. His was light blue with white stripes on the doors, clearly a custom paint job. I'll follow you to your place, Truck said before shutting the door, and we can leave from there together. I nodded. It was a plan. Not a plan that made me feel calm or prepared, but a plan nonetheless. The scrap cocked its head and stared up at me jauntily. It squeaked around the leaves in its mouth and its black eyes blinked lazily. Shut up, I said to it. Just shut up. It chewed on the leaves and leaped into the car and sat in the passenger seat as if it looked forward to an adventure. I started the car and headed toward my place. The scrap hummed some creepy atonal melody that made my skin crawl. I tried to ignore it, but eventually gave up. My new life was something that was too odd, too disturbing, too frightening to just put aside like that. I sighed and concentrated on the road while the damn dead thing beside me mumbled its crazy song.